The Nile winds through the desert like a silver thread, carrying the weight of kingdoms and the echoes of power long past. Among these currents of history, one figure stands out: Cleopatra, queen, strategist, survivor. She inherited a throne built on treachery and ambition. In a world where every choice could shift the balance of empires, her story is one of politics, of alliances forged and broken, of battles fought not only on the battlefield but in whispers and shadowed halls from Alexandria's glittering palaces to the courts of Rome. Her rise and fall would reshape the ancient world. This is the full biography of Cleopatra, her political journey, her cunning, her triumphs, and her inevitable decline. For more journeys through the past, and to uncover the stories that shaped our world, subscribe now and follow the channel for history like you've never seen it before. The Nile, in 69 BCE, traced its eternal path through the deserts of Egypt, feeding cities and civilizations that had endured millennia. Among them, Alexandria rose as a jewel of commerce, learning, and power. It was here that Cleopatra was born, into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a line descended from one of Alexander the Great's generals, ruling over a land whose roots were older than any memory of conquest. She entered a world of contradictions, a kingdom that was magnificent yet fragile, wealthy yet vulnerable, Greek in rulers but Egyptian in culture, a land where every flood, every grain harvest, every shipment through the harbor determined survival. Cleopatra's early years were steeped in the education of rulers. She learned languages, Egyptian, Greek, perhaps Aramaic, and mastered diplomacy, understanding that power depended not solely on inheritance, but on intelligence and perception. The Ptolemaic throne was never secure. Civil war, palace intrigue, and the threat of foreign invasion were constants. By the time she ascended to the throne in 51 BCE, alongside her younger brother Ptolemy XIII, the court was already a battleground. Alexandria's marble streets echoed with whispers of betrayal, and every advisor, soldier, and noble had an interest in shaping or undermining the queen. Power was practical, not ceremonial. To survive, Cleopatra had to navigate politics with precision. Egypt's wealth lay in its land, and its power lay in the Nile. Control of grain production, taxation, and trade routes meant control of loyalty. Cleopatra understood this, and she acted with purpose. Her initial reign faced immediate threats from Ptolemy XII's faction. Civil unrest, coupled with the delicate balance between Greek and Egyptian elites, meant that authority required not force alone but careful strategy. She cultivated support among priests, generals, and administrators, demonstrating that rule was not inherited but secured by asserting her intelligence and competence. She began consolidating power while presenting herself as a legitimate ruler in the eyes of her people. Beyond Egypt, the wider world posed both danger and opportunity. The Roman Republic, between 49 BCE and 44 BCE, was embroiled in its own civil conflicts. Pompey and Julius Caesar, once allies, had become rivals, and Rome's influence stretched across the Mediterranean. Cleopatra recognized that Egypt could not endure in isolation. When Caesar arrived in 48 BCE, pursuing Pompey into Egypt, Cleopatra seized the moment. She leveraged Rome's internal divisions to regain her throne, demonstrating political acumen that few could rival her. Alliance with Caesar was both calculated and essential. Rome was powerful, Egypt was vulnerable, and their interaction would determine the fate of her dynasty. Cleopatra's meeting with Caesar in 48 BCE is often recounted for its drama, yet it was a convergence of strategy and survival. By aligning herself with Rome's dominant general, she not only secured her rule over Egypt but also positioned her kingdom as an indispensable player in Mediterranean politics. Caesar's support displaced Ptolemy XII's faction, stabilizing the throne in Cleopatra's favor. Her power was reinforced, but she understood the subtle cost. Egypt's autonomy was now intertwined with the ambitions of a foreign empire. The years following Caesar's assassination in 44 BCE tested Cleopatra's political skill further. Rome plunged into renewed chaos, as Octavian and Mark Antony contested for supremacy. Cleopatra, now an experienced ruler, approached this turbulence with deliberate calculation. Her meeting with Mark Antony In 41 BCE was the product of decades of political observation. She recognized Antony's need for resources and legitimacy, and Egypt's position as both wealth provider and strategic ally became central to their alliance. Her influence was not based on romance alone, it was a convergence of mutual necessity. Together, Cleopatra and Antony reshaped the politics of the eastern Mediterranean. Egypt supplied troops, ships, and provisions, while Antony's campaigns extended Roman influence and sought to counter Octavian's growing power. Cleopatra's understanding of logistics, geography, and political leverage was evident. Alexandria's harbor and the Nile were more than symbols. They were instruments of statecraft. Every grain shipment, every naval deployment, every negotiation mattered. Yet as their partnership deepened, it also drew scrutiny and opposition from Rome. Political maneuvering was relentless. The closer she came to controlling outcomes, the greater the threat she faced from forces beyond her kingdom. By 31 BCE, the conflict between Octavian and Antony culminated in the Battle of Actium. Cleopatra's fleet, positioned alongside Antony's, faced not only the strategic skill of Octavian's commanders but also practical challenges. Supply lines stretched, morale wavered, and the Mediterranean winds favored neither fortune nor ambition. The defeat at Actium marked the irreversible turning point. Cleopatra's political genius could not compensate for the overwhelming pressure exerted by Rome's emerging imperial order. The loss was both strategic and symbolic, signaling the beginning of Egypt's absorption into a new world dominated by Rome. Following Actium, Alexandria became a stage for the final calculations of survival. Cleopatra maneuvered to maintain authority over her remaining forces and preserve her dynasty. Yet by 30 BCE, with Octavian's armies entering the city, all options had vanished. The political, economic, and military constraints she had long managed now converged inescapably. Cleopatra's death, often remembered in legend, was the ultimate outcome of her lifelong engagement with power and its limits. Egypt, once ruled by the Ptolemies for nearly 3 centuries, became a province of the Roman Empire. The systems she had navigated, alliances, trade, military logistics, remained, but under foreign command. Cleopatra's political journey illustrates the intersection of intellect, opportunity, and constraint. She navigated a landscape shaped by geography, wealth, and the shifting loyalties of both Egyptians and Romans. Her rise demonstrates how strategy, personal acumen, and careful calculation could secure power even under extreme danger. Her fall reminds us that political brilliance is ultimately contingent upon forces larger than any one individual. Forces of empire, military capacity, and historical circumstance. Her legacy endures not only in legend but in the practical lessons of governance. Egypt's integration into Rome altered the trajectory of the Mediterranean, just as the fall of the Mughal Empire in 1857 reshaped South Asia. Centuries later, Cleopatra's reign was a study in survival, negotiation, and the pragmatic exercise of authority. Her story conveys that the corridors of power are defined by choices measured against time, resources, and the shifting tides of circumstance. Even in death, her influence persisted. The political structures she navigated, taxation, trade, diplomacy, and strategic alliances, remained foundations upon which Rome would govern Egypt. Cleopatra's story, stretching from 51 BCE to her death in 30 BCE, reminds us that leadership is not solely about conquest or charisma, but about understanding systems, constraints, and the impermanence of advantage. Every alliance carried risk, every decision had consequences, every gain was temporary. The Nile continued its journey, indifferent to the ambitions of queens and emperors. Alexandria's streets carried new administrators and soldiers, yet the imprint of Cleopatra's political journey endured. Her life was a testament to the delicate balance between intellect and circumstance, ambition and limitation, strategy and survival. She had risen in a world of opportunity and danger, navigated forces far beyond her control, and ultimately faced the inexorable tide of history. Her story is neither myth nor mere romance. It is the story of politics, power, and the realities of governing a kingdom at the crossroads of empires. Cleopatra's rise and fall, her alliances with Caesar and Antony, and her final confrontation with Rome illustrate how the personal and political are inseparable, and how history is shaped by choices measured against the currents of time. Cleopatra's story is more than legend, it is a lesson in strategy, survival, and the delicate art of leadership. She rose in a world defined by uncertainty, navigated the treacherous waters of politics, and wielded influence across kingdoms and empires. Her choices were deliberate, her intellect formidable, and her legacy enduring from the bustling streets of Alexandria to the courts of Rome. Cleopatra demonstrated that power is never given, it is earned, maintained, and constantly tested. As we reflect on her journey, it becomes clear that her rise and fall were not simply about ambition or romance. They were about understanding the constraints of time, geography, and loyalty, and maneuvering through them with intelligence and foresight. Cleopatra showed that leadership is both an art and a science, a balance of insight, courage, and calculation. She teaches us that influence is never permanent, and even the most brilliant strategy must contend with forces beyond control. I hope you found this journey into her political life as fascinating as I did personally. I have always admired Cleopatra's ability to navigate such a complex and dangerous world with clarity and precision. Her story reminds us that history is shaped not just by battles and crowns, but by ideas, decisions, and the calculated risks leaders take. It is a reminder of the human capacity to shape events, even against overwhelming odds. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the full biography of Cleopatra, her politics, her strategy, her rise and fall, please show your support by liking this video. Your engagement helps us continue bringing these rich, detailed stories from the past to life. And if you want to explore more untold stories of empires, leaders, and dynasties, make sure to subscribe to Dynasty History. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an episode where we uncover the political intricacies and human dramas that shaped the world. History is not just in the past, it continues to teach, inspire, and reveal lessons for today. Cleopatra's journey has ended, but the lessons remain. Her brilliance, her risks, and her ultimate fate remind us that history is a story of strategy and consequence. Thank you for joining me on this exploration, and I look forward to guiding you through the next story of power, intrigue, and enduring legacy on Dynasty History.